Hello, everybody. It's Roundtable Tuesday, and want to say hello to everybody. Audrey Herman is here with me tonight, and I'm super excited about what we're going to be discussing this evening. So, first thing I have to talk about this evening is some very exciting news. You will be seeing from us come out over the next week invitations and information about a new activism group. And Audrey has agreed to be part of the leadership of that group, which is very exciting news to me. I'm so proud that she's doing that. And we are in the stages right now of getting all of our media up and running. So please be on the lookout for that. And in addition to that, we are also looking to dedicated folks who want to be part of the advisory and leadership team for that group. So please put that word out there. And if that is something that you'd be interested in, please let me know. I can provide you with information on the mission and other commitments for that. So that's number one. Now, we're going to go ahead and jump right into our topic for this evening. So I'm with Audrey Herman tonight, and Audrey recently ran a race over in House District 34. It was just the beginning of probably what's going to be many for her, and she did a great job. She's continuing on her political activism now and a number of other different things, I'm sure, which will be nothing more than a wonderful springboard into her next campaign. I know that we have her leadership to look forward to. But tonight, what we're going to be talking about is specifically political activism. What does it take? What works? What does it look like? So, Audrey, I'll let you talk for a minute, say hi, and tell everybody whatever it is you think you want to tell them, and then we'll get right into some question and answer.
Awesome. So, obviously, I'm Audrey Herman, and like Cynthia said, I ran for HD 34 representative. That was definitely a learning curve. It was a lot of fun, but now I have so much more information and knowledge under my belt that the next campaign I run in 2022 is going to be amazing. And I do intend on winning that primary if I have one, and I do intend on beating the Democrat incumbent. So I look forward to doing that, and I look forward to serving House District 34 and all of Colorado at the Capitol when I get that chance. So, you look like you're going to say something.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a delay. Go ahead.
Oh,
it'll catch up.
Okay. So yeah, just a little bit about me. I am currently a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling mom of 4, and I graduated from Colorado Christian University with my bachelor's of science in psychology. I am what you would call a nerd. I love researching. I really enjoy learning as much as I possibly can. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up running for House District Representative is I got set off on this trajectory of wanting to know more about how our government worked. And then once I learned more, I couldn't get enough of it, and I became enthralled with it. And I was like, this is something that I really want to do. And God really kind of placed it on my heart that it is something that I was supposed to do. So all of this was completely ordained and perfect timing. And God just really instilled in me a passion to serve others and continually, gain more knowledge and learn and enjoy what I do. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. And you're going to have a lot of opportunity as we grow this group throughout Colorado, too. It's really my goal that this is going to be way beyond local to include all reaches of the state. And I'm working furiously on that as we talk. So anyway, okay, so to our topic tonight, this really is all about educating people, explaining to people what it looks like. A lot of people might be interested in politics or in becoming active in their community towards something more important, particularly right now in our world, considering the just staggering amount of political issues that are going on every minute of every day. I know that there are more and more people saying, I'm ready or I want to take action. So let's talk to them about how to do that. So first of all, how long have you been involved in political activism, and what types of things have you done because of that activism? And I'm not necessarily meaning like what was the like mission you were fighting for per se, but the types of activities and the things that you end up doing as an activist.
So I've been in activism about 2 years now, and I have done things from protesting to testifying at the Capitol, calling and emailing legislators. I mean, you name it, I've probably done it. And it's a lot of work. It's extremely tiring, but when you have a mission and you are passionate about something, you will go to the nth degree, to the ends of the earth to make your voice heard. And the people at the Capitol are supposed to be our voices. And coming in, being an activist, I learned they don't always care what you have to say. And so that was kind of one of the reasons why I chose to run is I really wanted to be the people's voice. I wanted to make sure that they were heard because I know what it's like to repeatedly, painstakingly repeat yourself over and over and over and just falls on deaf ears. And it's not acceptable. It's not okay.
Well, you're going to be part of the new voice
Oh,
as we move forward. So that's good.
yes.
That's good. So, in your opinion, what is the most important part of political activism? Like, what works, what doesn't work as well? How is political activism accepted and taken and perceived by people? Just kind of, what do you think is important about that?
So I know a lot of people who just heard I'm an activist. I automatically assumed that I was one of those radical people. I'm not. um, One of the most effective things, like if you, let's say that there's a bill that comes forward that you really disagree with, or you even really agree with, the most important thing you can do is contact your legislators and have a sit down meeting with them face to face. Face to face is the key thing. The next best thing would be a phone call. And then after that, an email. But seriously, face to face and phone calls are the most important. If your legislator, it's their job to meet with you. They need to carve out time to sit down and talk with you, whether that is meeting them in their office at the Capitol or meeting them at a local coffee shop. That is their job. And so you are not inconveniencing them. They may act like you are, but you're not. It's what they do. So, really, and when you sit down with a legislator, you have to really speak to the bill. Legislators don't, not all, but a majority of legislators don't particularly care about your personal stories. And that is something that has become increasingly obvious the more and more I've been in activism. Is your personal story, it's just anecdotal. They need you to speak to the bill because they can't fix your story. They can't do anything about your story, but they can do something about page 5, line 23 of a bill. So when you go and sit down with the legislator, you really need to have read the bill yourself, know what the bill is saying, and then make suggestions, on your based on your own opinion or what you think would be best for that legislator. So then they have something tangible to work with. That is probably the most important thing you can do is make sure you're always speaking to the bill. Now, you can also contact your legislators and say, hey, I think that this is something that should be brought up. This is something that should be legislated or not legislated. Um, just really staying involved. Like they're called representatives for a reason. They're supposed to represent you. And so your voice does matter and it should matter to your representative. And even if your representative is on the opposite end of the political spectrum, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to sit down with you. My current representative is a Democrat. I'm a Republican, and I've had at least two face-to-face conversations with him. That's his job. Even though he doesn't necessarily like my opinion, he does have to sit and listen to it.
Right, right. Because, and I think this is something, I think one of the reasons we've got so off track about the whole notion, right, that representatives represent us. We hire them by checking a box, right, by paying taxes that go toward, employing them, so to speak. And we've gotten in this mode over the years of saying, oh, calling politicians our leaders, our leaders, our leaders, our leaders, right? They're not meant to be our leaders. We should be leading ourselves. They are there to represent our path. Okay, yep. They're there to represent us. And we have allowed far too long, too many people who elected officials who have gone way outside the realm of representation. They've gone outside of what they are supposed to be doing to represent us, to do things that are representative of the will of the people, that type of thing, and working on their own agenda. And so I think that, in the general public, right, when you say, well, don't think that you're bothering them or whatever, people do tend to start to feel that because we've been indoctrinated sort of for a long time into believing that these people have some special level of importance and leadership role that we're almost interfering with. And that would be like you going to work and your boss wanting to talk with you and you saying, I don't have time for you, right?
Right.
That's not how things work. You definitely have time for your manager when they ask you to talk to them. Mm-hmm. So, and I'm oftentimes really pragmatic, Audrey, about things. Like I look at things about how does it work in business? How does it work in industry? How do things work when the bottom line matters? And we tend to sometimes not do it that way in politics.
Right. Yeah, that is something that a lot of people don't think that, they have a right to call or email their representative. And they absolutely do. That's what they're there for, And so just to throw it out there, it's, I think, colorado.gov, but you can just Google Colorado legislators and a website will pop up and you can click on Find My Legislator, type in your address, and it'll tell you who your representative is, who your senator is, and their contact information, because it's your right to contact them. And, one of the things, people think, that their voice doesn't matter. And that is something that we need to get across to more people, that their voice really does matter. And, one of the things I've started saying is government or politics, it's not a spectator sport. We are all supposed to be on the field taking these hits together, because what they do affects every single one of our lives, and when they're pushing an agenda or they are, voting because they've received financial money or signed a contract with someone at some point in time, we can't just let them do whatever they want to do. Our voices do matter. And so when to me, people are like, well, I don't want to keep emailing or I don't want to keep calling. I feel like I'm bugging them. And I'm like, well, you know what? You're not supposed, their job is not supposed to be easy. I mean, you're dealing with a very unique individuals. I mean, we're all individuals. We all have our own opinions on everything. And their job is not meant to be easy. And especially if they're doing something you don't like, don't let their job be easy. Which I know, saying that if I eventually become a representative, people are going to be like, well, she said. I know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, and you're kind of in it. I mean, you get that. So that's why it's important for people who get that to run and things. And I just want to also say, it's funny because you kind of already addressed one of the questions I was going to ask. And I was going to say, what do you say to people that say, oh, it doesn't matter what I say, nothing's going to change, or I don't like politics, I don't follow politics, I don't get into politics. But you already kind of said that, you've answered that question. It's, you might say you don't pay attention to politics, but you don't have a choice. Politics is dictating part of your life,
Yep.
whether you like it or not. And my my stepdad says, he goes, a lot of people have that "it's not my ox" type of mentality, right? If it's not my ox getting gored, then what do I care? And even people who are talking about all of the civil unrest and different things that are going on right now, people are like, oh, we're going to take action, this, that. Well, when it's poking you enough,
Right.
that's just kind of unfortunately how that works. But the other thing I wanted to piggyback on what you were saying is, calling your legislator and stuff. This is not just about state legislators, but it's about a number of different things. I mean, at all levels of government, even if it's your city council member, your mayor, we see the big figures on TV. We see the federal, representatives. We see the president. We see the governor. We see the mayors of these really big capital cities and stuff like that in the news, that type of thing more. We don't see our state legislators in the news as much.
Right.
We don't see our local politicians and elected leaders or elected representatives in the news as much. So I live in Thornton, who are my city council members, but this is really about, at all levels, activism counts, because it's not just those big, mean positions that are controlling everything.
Right.
Our
Right now,
represent-
right now,
Yeah.
it's city council members who are, are mandating masks in different counties, or different towns. So, your city council, they have an impact there. Your mayor can also make a decision for you. So yes, you're correct. At every single level, even when you think, oh, they don't have much of an impact, they really do.
Big impact. They can have a big impact, particularly because the way that our governmental structure is set up is that we defer down, okay, in terms of regulation, to the most local level in a lot of ways. So in a lot of ways, right, at the federal level, they defer down to the state, or the state defers down to the county, or things like that. So we allow autonomy, or we historically, it's supposed to be allowing local autonomy. I say that tongue in cheek. Right, local autonomy to those smaller segments of government, so that they can serve more representatively of the people that are immediately affected by their decisions. So the town of such and such, right, the county of such and such, because our populace varies so much from town to city to county to state, it's meant to be set up where we have that local ear, that local touch on what's going on in our community.
It's because every single one of our communities, they're all individual, they're all unique.
And I think we have seen a lot of overreaching into that, where we see people and politicians at higher levels, right, in effect, overriding the way the government is supposed to be working to allow that local autonomy. And that becomes problematic.
Mm-hmm.
So, most of your activism and most of the activity that you've done has been with regard to House bills in the state. Is that correct? In dealing with legislative representatives?
So, House and Senate bills.
Okay.
Yep.
So mostly our state representatives at that level is really what you've been working on or chipping away at during this time that you've been involved.
Okay. Yes. But, I know within our group, there are a lot of people who, they do go to their city council, they do contact their mayors. And, I haven't, I did reach out to the mayor of my town. But the follow-up was a little shady. And then I was just like, well, on this particular issue, she's not going to have much of a say anyway. So, you really do have to figure out also, who who the problem falls on. So, for instance, like one issue is like our sidewalks here aren't wide enough for a wheelchair. You know, who dictates that? You know, it's not the people up at the Capitol. That's way more local than up at the Capitol. So you also have to figure out, you know, where your issue falls.
Right. Right. And that's important, I think, for people who might be listening tonight who say, oh, I want to get involved, or I feel like it's important for me to get involved because I have this thing that I'm passionate about. I want this to go through, or I don't want this to go through, or I want wheelchair accessible sidewalks. I want the crack in my street fixed, or I don't want this House bill to pass, or whatever it might be.
Right.
But it is important that people learn how to identify what it is where they need to go to get what it is they're passionate about and what they want to do accomplished. Okay. So another question then I do want to talk about, because I think that this is somewhat nebulous to some people, although I know that some of it is available for viewing, but I don't think a lot of people do sit and watch the legislator. Can you talk a little bit about what happens in legislative session or in a hearing, and what happens when community members come to testify? What does that look like when you're downtown at the Capitol doing that?
So a little bit of education on how a bill gets passed is kind of important. So a bill gets introduced in either the House or the Senate. So let's just say a bill gets introduced in the House. Then it will get assigned to a committee. And in that committee hearing, that is where they allow public testimony. So you can get online and you can look up particular bills or particular committees, but bills don't always fall in line with the committee name. So you'll have to track your bill, see where it's at, and it'll tell you when this bill will be heard, in what order it'll be heard. Sometimes they go out of order, but whatever. And you can show up to those committee hearings. Those committee hearings it is a constitutional right of a Coloradan to be able to testify on a bill, whether you are for or against it. So you show up at the Capitol, you find your committee room, and you sit and wait to be called. You sign up on a sheet, whatever, that says if you're for or against the bill. But then they'll eventually call you up, and you usually have a couple minutes to talk, usually between 2 and 5 minutes. So on a more controversial bill, it'll usually only be about 2 minutes. So you want to have your testimony prepared beforehand. You'll also want to know how long they're allowing the public to testify. That way you can tailor your testimony to the time frame that they're allowing. And then again, while you're testifying, speak to the bill. You also have to know who is on your committee. If it is a Democrat heavy committee, then you're going to want to have Democrat talking points that would either be for or against the bill to try to get them to see your side of it. Or if it's Republican heavy, same thing. You need to know who your audience is, because right now we have a Democratic supermajority. So every single committee is Democrat heavy. So right now, a Republican going in is going to have to kind of change their thinking a little bit to be able to pull things out of a bill that are a Democrat platform, idea, and say, well, this actually goes, this actually goes against what your guys' platform is. So it's really, really, really important that you speak to the bill and know who your audience is. But it's super simple. You just go up, you sit down, you say what you have to say, and you're done. I mean, it is really that simple.
So when I hear, two things that I want to comment on what you said is you'll find out how much time they're allowing for testimony and stuff. And I think you could talk to the fact that they try to do some nice trickery, right, where they cut back the time so that everybody who wants to testify can't testify, right? So if there's something that people are trying to push through and they know there's a lot of opposition to it and not a lot of support for it, right? So we have, 100 people sitting out there waiting to oppose it and testify. Well, certainly we're going to limit how much time we give to public testimony, right? So, and I think we just saw that in June with one of the things that you and I were downtown
Yep.
squawking about. So it's important to be aware of how this process can also be manipulated.
Yes.
Um,
They are absolutely allowed to limit testimony. They are absolutely not just individual testimony, but how much time overall can be spent on testimony. And that can even include opening and closing remarks from the legislators. That can include questions from the legislators to the panel that's sitting up there. Um, it is absolutely manipulated. And this last particular, bill that you were just talking about, um, the what is she called? I can't think of what her title is in that particular scenario in committee at the moment. But I mean, she actually said that she wasn't going to be held hostage. That's why she limited testimony.
by an opposition. She was very specific,
Oh yeah,
right?
oh
She
yeah.
wasn't
She
going
was
to
very.
be held hostage by opposition.
She
So,
her quote was, I refuse to be held hostage by a vocal minority. That was her exact phrase.
i.e., I don't want to hear your voice.
Yes. Well, I'm
So,
sorry. That's your job.
yeah, right, exactly. So it's important, though, to know that when you go into activism, or if you get ready to do this and you're ready to fight for or against whatever it is, something that you need to understand how the system works, but not only how it works, but how it can be manipulated, how it has been, the walls you're going to run up against, right? Because you're not going to go and win every time.
Right.
Um, and there was something else that you said that I wanted to comment on. Let me think about. Oh, you were talking about, if you're going in and the committee is really heavy one way or the other, that you may have to, think about how you're thinking and what you're saying and try to strategize in a way that will win that group, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is super important. And being from a conservative platform myself, I think it's important for us to recognize that marching in, wrapped in an American flag and pounding our fist is not always the way to win, right? And it's also important to recognize that compromise doesn't mean that you're compromising your values. Um,
Correct.
this is the art of persuasion. This is the art of logic. Logic is something that in all of my educational studies through undergrad and graduate school, logic it's a topic, it's a skill, it's a science in and of itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we have to look at when we're doing that, because again, just going in and telling your own story, just going in and running far right or far left or whatever it might be is not always going to be the approach that will get you where you want to be.
And the other thing is, if you're going in there and you're telling your own story to try and sway a vote, and they don't vote in your favor, you have opened yourself up very personally to a group of strangers who then can be very hurtfully dismissive of everything that you just said. And then it becomes a very personal attack on you. So avoiding your own personal story, especially in testimony, um, that's a protection for you as well. As of right now, unless you fall in line with the Democratic agenda, their party, they don't want to hear your personal story. And so it's really
I
to
don't want to
protect.
hear from you at all. Sorry.
No. Yeah. I mean, I can safely say that, sorry, this is all backwards. Like we walk into the Capitol and you can feel the tension of how disliked we are there. They do not want us to be there. I mean, with all the different protests that are going on at the moment, I mean, the things the Democrats said about our group is polar opposite of what they're saying about current protesters. It's despicable, honestly. It's disgusting that they're talking about their constituents that way.
Well, and the reality of it is that this is nothing new for
No.
politicians, right, to support, their own agenda, their party agenda, whatever it might be. And every, I mean, I ran for office, you ran for office, we both plan to do that again. We're You've been involved in activism, I'm starting activism, you're going to work on that with me, we've got all kinds of stuff going on. And so naturally, right, there's a reason we're doing it. There's things we're passionate about. So it's not to say that people are not going to go in there with their own passions, but it is important to recognize that once you're elected into office, it is your job to represent the populace of people that
Yep.
are in the area that you were elected to represent. So if you're elected to represent as a legislator in the state of Colorado, well, you're representing everybody in Colorado. And naturally, you are going to go into it with your own biases. We're all human beings, but there
Right.
has to be there has to be checks and balances, and of course, we know those are not always there. So that always brings me back, right, to the same thing that I have said over and over and over again: is that it is so important for us to vet and recruit and train and support, not just by saying, oh, yeah, I like that person, but actually support.
Yeah.
Walk for them, call for them, donate $5 to them, send mailers for them, do something for candidates and people who are out there who represent the things that are important to you. They don't have to live right next door to you. They don't even necessarily have to be the person running for something right in your city, town, district, whatever. If they're going to be a representative in Colorado or in some way have an impact over your life, support them, you know?
Exactly. And, that's one thing, the Democrats have that Republicans don't, is Democrats have a lot of emotionally empowered people who go to bat for them, and they're just super emotionally charged. And so when you're emotionally charged like that, they will go walk houses, they will make phone calls, they will go do all these things. And I just don't feel like we have that same type of passion on the Republican side. But Republicans also don't have the funding that Democrats do. Democrats also have the funding to go pay people to put flyers on doors and make phone calls and send text messages. Republicans don't have that kind of funding. So there's also a complacency within the Republican Party that needs to be addressed. That I'm really hoping that after this year and everything that has gone on, that we get the silent majority to really step up and speak out and support. That is, it's going to make or break us.
Right, right. Well, I'm absolutely convinced that what we are doing right now is essential to move toward that end. I can't say enough that I think that the face of politics has changed enormously over the last few years, and that to be able to reach the majority of people that we need to replenish our party, to bring new life into the party, to make our party sustainable, is to really attack things like our social media, our mode of communication, the information we're putting out there, our visibility, our branding, as a group, and that's so important. And that's why I'm doing this, is to work
Right.
toward that end, to lay a framework for that, to be an example, to help do that to whatever extent I can. Of course, with no false hope that I'm any kind of savior, but I'm going to chip away at that corner of the rock, if it, takes me forever just to make it tilt an inch. So,
Right.
um,
And that's something that you and I both have in common. We both have a passion, we both have a desire, we both have a calling, and we are willing to chase that calling no matter what it takes. And I think another part of, the fact that people aren't as involved is people don't know how to get hooked up.
Yes.
I had no idea how to get hooked up with the Adams County Republican Party. A friend of mine connected me. I didn't know where to begin. I didn't know where to start. And so by getting all this information out to people about where they can go, who they can talk to, just how to go about it, that's going to be key as well, because there has to be more than just, a few dozen people who are interested in politics.
Right.
There are more. There have to be more. They just don't know how to do it.
And I will say, give a shout out to the ACRC right now. Kavika, the vice chair up there, is working on a program that lends to what I was just talking about finding, recruiting, vetting, supporting, and training candidates and that type of thing. And I really just hope that program kicks off, immensely. But it's going to take more than just the few people that are there or his efforts alone. I mean, he's one person. The committee even is just a small group of people to really make that type of thing successful, or maybe make it a blueprint. So it's going to take people like us. It's going to take people like you, whoever you are watching tonight, to make these things matter. Okay.
Yep.
We no longer have the luxury of sitting back and saying someone else will make this fight for us. I'm looking straight at the camera. I'm talking to anybody who's watching this now, tomorrow, a week from now, a year from now, however long it takes you to see this video. I'm looking straight at you and I'm telling you, we are at critical mass. You cannot sit back and assume someone else is going to make the fight for you. We need to fight together. It is much better to be part of a movement than to be a martyr. Okay. And that's my goal, is to not be a martyr, but to be part of a movement. And if I have to kind of point my finger and stare into the camera, or whatever that takes, then that's what I want to do. Splatter these images, these conversations everywhere we can, and, move the rock.
Yes.
That's how I feel about it right now. And if you hear me get riled up, it's because we need to be riled up. It's time to be riled.
And I don't know what it's going to take to get more people riled up, but man, we have got to, like, it is, they can't take us down if we're all linked arm in arm. They can't do it. We need the people who are sitting back and being like, well, I do care, but, well, if you care, help. We have to have help. We have to have you step up.
And this is not just a party line issue, even though, you and I have our own belief systems and what we ascribe to, but there are people out there that are sitting on the fence. They're maybe undecided, unaffiliated, whatever you want to call them. They're not sure. They don't have a lot of faith in either party, but they have their own beliefs. Forget that. Okay? Stop worrying about the party. Get out and fight for what you believe in.
Honestly, I don't care if you are Democrat or Republican or unaffiliated. Government politics is not a spectator sport. Get involved. The fact that, now in Colorado, unaffiliateds can vote in primaries, that's huge. That is huge. The fact that my area, my House district only got just barely over 5,000 votes total. 5,000 votes
between both candidates in the primary.
Yeah, and okay, so let's see. I think the Democrat incumbent got just over 8,000 votes. There are so many more voters than, what is that? 13,000? Mm-hmm. There are so many more voters than that. Where are you guys? Yeah. Your vote really does matter. You may not think it matters with a presidential election, but let me tell you, your vote really matters in local government.
Yeah. I had a water leak at my last house I lived in. And it started off as a little tiny leak. It was just a little drip. Okay. And pretty soon it started to drip just a little bit more. But it dripped and it dripped and it dripped. Well, pretty soon it was dripping like about a gallon an hour. Okay. That's a lot of water.
Mm-hmm.
Just remember, every little drip helps, right? To make a flood,
It all
to
adds
make a
up.
tidal wave. And that's the way I look at it. Like when people say, oh, my vote doesn't count. Well, by itself, if you're the only person in the whole state voting, well, of course, maybe it's not going to count. But if you and me and all of us are voting, then it does count, right? One, droplet of water an hour is nothing. A gallon of water an hour is a lot. And it really affected my water bill. But I'm just talking metaphorically because it's like, I don't know how else to convince people that their action is important.
Right.
So
it really is important. And, showing up at the Capitol and calling your legislators, that's important. Like we can't do this alone. We just can't, when it makes a big difference if it's just one person or 500 people. If 500 people show up to vote or to testify against a bill, do you know the impact that makes?
Yeah.
I mean, it really makes those legislators second guess, like, oh, should I pass this bill along? They might still push it through. You don't know what's happening, behind the scenes. But, I mean, your voice really matters. Your physical presence, even if you don't testify, your physical presence matters. So if there is something happening that you're passionate about, follow it up, track it. And if it becomes a bill and it gets introduced, start making phone calls, start emailing, show up and testify. That is your right as a Colorado citizen.
So I'm going to end by saying inaction is a choice, and everybody should be responsible for their choices.
Yep.
And again, my call to action is join Audrey and I's group. When you start seeing the invitations coming out, please check that. Mark in my comments right now on this, send me a private message. I don't care. Send a blimp up with a flyer on it. Let me know. Yep, I'm ready. And we will help get you connected. We will help steer you in the right direction. We are looking for people to be part of our group, advisory, leadership. There's all types of roles you can take. So please, when you get the call, answer it. Answer that call. Click on that invitation. Accept the invitation to take charge. Be part of the leading voice. Don't let politicians be deemed our leaders. We are our own leaders. We set our own destiny. Be part of that leading voice. So,
absolutely.
All right, everybody. Well, I know we went over a little bit, but thank you if you joined us tonight. And if either Audrey or I can answer any questions for you, just grab us through private message. I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn. This video will be up on YouTube in case you just jumped on. You're only catching the last few minutes. You need to go back and look at it. It'll be on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We'll spread it throughout Facebook groups. I know Audrey will be sharing it. So if you catch this last minute of this, share this video, please. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Audrey, so much for being here with me.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, it was fun. All right, everybody. Have a great night.